What if good and evil are not what we think they are? What if the things we call evil are actually necessary for human progress? Nietzsche believed that morality, especially the kind taught by religion, was not about truth but about control. He argued that the ideas of good and evil were invented to shape human behavior, often in ways that kept people weak instead of strong. He introduced the concept of master morality and slave morality. Master morality comes from strength, power, and confidence. It values ambition, courage, and self-improvement. In contrast, slave morality comes from weakness. It teaches people to value humility, obedience, and suffering. Instead of striving for greatness, slave morality tells people to be passive and accept their fate. Nietzsche believed that over time, slave morality took over society, especially through religion. Qualities like ambition and independence were labeled as evil, while qualities like submission and self-denial were praised as good. But in reality, this morality was created by the weak to keep the strong from rising. It was a way for powerless people to make themselves feel superior by calling powerful people evil. This, Nietzsche believed, was a huge problem. If society only rewards weakness and punishes strength, how can humanity grow? How can individuals reach their full potential? He argued that instead of avoiding struggle, we should embrace it. Instead of fearing ambition, we should see it as a force for progress. But does that mean he encouraged cruelty and destruction? Not at all. Nietzsche had a very different idea of how struggle, and even so-called evil, can lead to greatness. That which does not kill us makes us stronger. Nietzsche believed that hardship is not an obstacle, it is the path to growth. He saw struggle, pain, and conflict as necessary forces that push people to become stronger and better. Without challenges, there is no reason to improve. Without resistance, there is no strength. Think about it. Throughout history, the greatest changes and advancements came from struggle. The Renaissance, one of the most important times of learning and creativity, happened because people challenged the old way of thinking. Scientific discoveries like evolution and gravity came from thinkers who refused to accept outdated ideas. Political revolutions happened when people fought against oppression. If everyone had simply accepted their situation and avoided conflict, the world would never have progressed. Nietzsche saw struggle as something that builds character. He believed that people who avoid difficulties and always seek comfort will never reach their full potential. This is why he warned against a society that tries to remove all suffering. If people are never challenged, they will become weak. If ambition and competition are discouraged, progress will stop. But does this mean Nietzsche believed in violence or cruelty? No, his point was not that we should create suffering for others, but that we should not run away from the struggles that life naturally brings. Instead of fearing hardship, we should use it as fuel for growth. You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. How could you rise anew if you have not first become ashes? Nietzsche believed that many of the qualities society calls evil, ambition, rebellion, and power, are actually the driving forces of progress. He argued that if we look at history, the people who changed the world were often seen as dangerous or even evil in their time. Take ambition. Many religious and moral teachings say that being ambitious is bad, that people should be humble and not seek too much power. But without ambition, how would great leaders, scientists, and artists achieve anything? Ambition is what drives people to create, discover, and build new things. Rebellion is another example. Throughout history, those who challenged authority were often seen as evil at first. Socrates was executed for questioning traditional beliefs. Galileo was punished for saying the earth moves around the sun. But in the end, their ideas changed the world. Nietzsche saw these people as examples of the Übermensch, or superhuman, those who rise above society's limitations and create their own values. Nietzsche was not saying that everything society calls evil is good, but he wanted people to think for themselves instead of blindly accepting what they are told. Instead of following rules without question, he believed that individuals should decide their own values based on strength, creativity, and growth. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Even though Nietzsche lived over 100 years ago, his ideas are more relevant than ever. Today, many people seek comfort and safety above all else. Society teaches us to avoid struggle and to believe that life should be fair and easy. But Nietzsche would argue that this mindset is dangerous because it makes people weak instead of strong. In today's world, many people blame society, the system, or others for their problems instead of taking control of their own lives. Nietzsche believed that this was the result of slave morality, where people focus more on what they lack rather than how they can overcome their struggles. He would say that instead of complaining about problems, we should use them as motivation to improve ourselves. This also applies to personal growth. Many people fear failure and avoid difficult situations. But Nietzsche would say that failure is not something to fear, it is something to learn from. Every struggle is an opportunity to become stronger. The key is to embrace the challenge instead of running from it. However, Nietzsche's ideas are often misunderstood. Some people think he was promoting selfishness or cruelty, but that is not true. He was not saying that people should harm others. Instead, he wanted individuals to focus on their own self-overcoming, to become the best version of themselves. The real Übermensch is not someone who dominates others, but someone who has power over their own life. You must become who you are. Nietzsche's philosophy is not about making life easier, it is about making life meaningful. He teaches us that hardship is not a curse but an opportunity. The strongest people are those who face difficulties and grow from them. Instead of avoiding struggle, we should embrace it as a necessary part of becoming stronger. The biggest lesson from Nietzsche is that progress comes from struggle. Throughout history, the greatest individuals and societies have grown through challenges. Those who avoid struggle remain weak, while those who embrace it rise above their limitations. He also teaches us to question morality. Instead of blindly following society's definition of good and evil, we should think for ourselves. Many of the things we call evil, like ambition, power, and rebellion, are actually the forces that drive progress. The key is to use these forces wisely, not destructively. Most importantly, Nietzsche's philosophy is about taking responsibility for your own life. Instead of waiting for the world to change, he urges us to change ourselves. The world will always be full of challenges, but how we respond to them determines who we become. Nietzsche does not promise an easy life, but he offers a path to a life of strength, meaning, and greatness. Will you take the challenge? What do you think? Do you agree with Nietzsche's view on evil?